Ah.
Okay, I think we are live. I don't know how many people are here, but hello, whoever is here. We are joined by Dr. Thomas Baudinette. Thank you for coming. You are a... Oh, I have not prepared this. You are a researcher. You are a father. You're not a father. You are a queer man. DC is embarrassed by this. Okay.
Would you like me to do a self introduction?
Please.
Professor at Macquarie.
So yes, I'm senior lecturer in international studies at Macquarie University, Sydney, Australia. I am a cultural anthropologist who explores issues of gender and sexuality across East and Southeast Asian media. I think that I'm particularly well known for my research into boys' love across various different societies, but particularly Thailand, author of the book Boys Love Media in Thailand, Celebrity Fans and Transnational Asian Queer Popular Culture, which came out last year from Bloomsbury. And as well as being an academic of Asian media of various forms, I'm also obviously a fan and tend to reflect on my academic journey is very much embedded within my fandom as well. So hence I've got a picture of a concert I attended in Bangkok, Bouncy Boon. That yellow dot over there is where I was sitting. So yeah. Which I didn't realize was on the photo when I set it as my background, but oh well. So yes, that's who I am. I hope that helps.
And you've recently been around the Northern Hemisphere. What has your research where has that led to?
So this year I was very lucky to receive some funding to go and do some extended field work in the Philippines and in Bangkok during the Northern Hemisphere summer, so June and July. The work in Bangkok was specifically looking at fandom for Japanese and Korean media, but of course always within that is embedded my research into BL. And my period of research in Bangkok, sorry, did I say Bangkok? I meant Manila previously. My research in Bangkok was really focused on my interest in kind of less about fandom than it is about issues of sitting around production of BL and thinking about recent kind of moves by the Thai state to mobilize BL as a soft power resource. And I spent time meeting with industry and government stakeholders to kind of talk about and think about what that means and also to set the groundwork for what will likely be a larger project next year with my collaborators in Thailand around on this question, as well as just kind of taking in and speaking to those involved in the BL industry, writers, producers, directors, etc., just around some of the recent trends, as well as, of course, since I was there after the kind of passing of marriage equality, also just kind of touching base with people about what people, the connections between, the BL industry, fandom, the fight for marriage equality and Pride more broadly, Pride Month more broadly in Bangkok. And that's actually a kind of project I've been running now for a few years. So that was more about wrapping that up. So that's what I've been up to recently.
Great. So just for our viewers so far, I think the summary of events or topics that we'll cover this live is, I think, just go through bits of your book that DC has read.
We weren't going to touch that.
Oh, we weren't?
No.
Okay. Well, we don't have to. We don't have to. Okay. Sometimes my ears are listening, but my brain is not. Okay, so we'll jump straight to we want to go across Asia and talk about recent trends and things that have been happening that's interesting and innovative in the BL industry. So we'll go through Thailand, Korea, the Philippines if we can, and Japan. So let's start with the Philippines, obviously, because marriage equality has passed in their government.
The Philippines?
The Philippines?
Oh.
No, Thailand. We're starting with Thailand.
What time is it in Australia?
I can't speak to this. What's happening in Edison's room?
Contextually, everything I said worked, but it's not. But Thailand, marriage equality.
Yes.
It just has to get approved by the king, is what I
Yes. So
know.
it was it passed its final reading in the Senate in mid-June. Sorry, I can't remember the exact date right now. 17th of June, perhaps, something like that. And it will then eventually be published in the Royal Charter, which is the formal mechanism through which laws are kind of enacted in Thailand. It's kind of similar in the Australian system when we have the Governor General sign off on the laws on behalf of the monarch, and then they become actual statute. Likewise, in the United States, the president needs to sign off on a law before it becomes statute. This is just a formal mechanism of the state. So in all practical practicalities, marriage equality has passed in Thailand, and people will be able to get married. Same-sex people will be able to get married by the end of the year, most likely. So, which is of course a huge win. Decades of activism on behalf of various different political parties on both sides of the political spectrum, one might add, as well as grassroots activists, has led to this, including the very intense activism of youth protesters in the late 2021 to 2022, as well as the recent, kind of elections in Thailand has helped set the stage for this. I often have been saying to people, we can't approach this as if it was a fait accompli, that it was something that was going to naturally happen, because there had to be significant social change and political change in Thailand to facilitate this moment, but it is definitely something that should be celebrated. Thailand becomes the first nation in Southeast Asia to pass marriage equality, and the third in Asia after Taiwan and Nepal. So this is like a hugely significant thing. I was actually in Manila when this was going down. And I was surrounded by Filipino LGBTQ plus people and their allies looking to Thailand and saying, us next. This is like taking great power and hope from what was coming out of Thailand. And of course, many of them were BL fans and were celebrating it within the context of their kind of engagement with Thailand. And I want to emphasize that we can't draw a kind of causative relationship with the rise of BL to the granting of marriage equality. I think that that's too simplistic a story to tell with regards to kind of the granting of marriage equality, and to do so would be to fall into the myth of Thailand as some kind of LGBTQ plus paradise, blah, 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 blah. But we can certainly look at the changes in the BL industry in Thailand. And I think it's great that DC has not me in the background, because it's a seminal moment. Like, we can see the attitudes and the desires, particularly of young people, being reflected in the content in BL, and also in the activism of celebrities involved in the BL and GL industries, as well as various producers and managers and directors. So this is actually something that I'm currently writing a paper on, a much delayed paper, I might add, because I've been so busy. But what I'm really interested in is not so much how the rise of the BL industry is somehow kind of causing, I'm not looking at a cause and effect relationship, but I am interested in how BL reflects these broader social changes and the activist roles that certain celebrities in the industry have played in kind of issues of LGBTQ plus rights, as well as the issue of marriage equality. My argument in the article is that in a kind of post-2021 moment, after the youth protest movements that occurred at that point in time, and the public shift in support towards progressive political parties, such as the recently disbanded Move Forward Party, which is now known as the People's Party, is kind of the fact is that there's an expectation on behalf of consumers, both in Thailand but also globally involved in Thai BL, that actors and series and companies invest into and demonstrate good politics, and that they demonstrate their alignment with LGBTQ plus issues from a perspective of company. This is something we call corporate ethics. It's something that we can critique in some regards, but at the same time, I think that it's useful. I think, like, you know, as much as it's useful to critique corporate ethics, it cannot be denied that the fact that youth media in particular in Thailand embraced and moved towards celebrating pride and marriage equality is significant in some regards. But I think the activists, like the activism of many of the young people involved in the industry, is part and parcel of a broader kind of progressive shift in the youth politics of Thailand. So we shouldn't be looking at the ways in which they celebrate pride as being tokenistic. Indeed, some actors have been really quite vocal, and some couples. So I'm looking at a few different couples in the article. I'm specifically looking at Earthmix and Z Nunu, because they were extremely vocal, kind of political, especially Earth Sahapap. He even got censored by the powers that be for being too loud. So these people, like, their activism is I would say authentic activism. It isn't inauthentic activism, and that's kind of what my recent article that I'm literally supposed to be finishing by the end of the month. I won't finish it by the end of the month, but I'm supposed to finish it by the end of the month, is currently arguing.
That sounds like, so it's kind of like a group effort, but we can't really, no one takes credit. It's a group effort.
Yes, so I'm not, as I said, I'm not interested in, and I think it's dangerous and indeed lazy to suggest that there's a cause and effect relationship. But I think that as a kind of popular culture reflects the current zeitgeist, right? And hence, like, so when Not Me broadcast, and like, once again, thank you, DC, for having that as the background for various different reasons. It was significant because it sought to reflect through a BL show the current, like, it was broadcast during the student protests.
Yeah.
So the fact that it focuses on the student protests and acts as an allegory for the student protests, just like the eclipse also acted as an allegory for changes to Thailand's society. I know that these are not particularly useful, not particularly current series right now, but they reflected something about the moment that they were produced. And the fact is that you had explicit LGBTQ plus activism being depicted in questions of marriage equality. And then after that, we had a slew of shows, such as, for example, Cutie Pie, right up until the recent Cherry Magic Thai, or One Day Good Day, that ended with marriage. And this isn't some kind of like wishful, romantic, Mills and Boone-esque sort of thing. It was specifically political in its representation. Indeed, it's famously mentioned that Cherry Magic, when they produced that series starring Tae New, GMMTV, adapted from a Japanese manga, they shot two versions of the final episode, one in which marriage equality was real and one in which marriage equality was aspirational. And they broadcast the one that was focused on, you know, wouldn't it be great if this was a real wedding and you were actually getting legally recognized? Whereas in the context of One Day Good Day, the sub couple who ended up getting married, like they shot a special scene after the passing of marriage equality in which we see the couple played by Tor and Fluke, I can't remember their characters' names, watching like the announcement of marriage equality and then proposing, and then they get married. And like, this is, as I said, it's not causative, but it shows you that BL is a vehicle for kind of messages and narratives about the current political moment. And that's what I've been really interested in. So we have seen a transformation. Like, marriage is now very much on the table. We're getting series that explicitly focus on that. And it's not just some kind of romantic wish fulfillment. It's also a celebration of the political potentials that Thailand has that other particular markets don't have. And then that trickles throughout the rest of the space. For me, what's always been interesting is the fact that Taiwan, where marriage equality has been on the cards for many years, hasn't necessarily embraced this sort of storytelling. And I think it's because the BL industry in Taiwan emerged after marriage equality that they haven't felt the need to visibilize it as such. Whereas in Thailand, because it's always been this hugely aspirational thing, especially since about 2020 onwards, it's become part of the formal narratives and the formal storytelling processes of that particular market. And that's very interesting to me. I also feel very kind of pleased because I concluded my book with a reflection on this very moment, and made a few modest predictions. And those predictions turned out to be correct. So I had two predictions in the end of my book: that we would see marriage equality and LGBTQ plus activism rise in Thai BL industry, and the other one was that I predicted that Gap, the series, would lead to an explosion of girls' love and sex. And then, like, absolutely, that was. That's what I'm particularly proud of. I predicted Free and Becky. But yeah, so this is kind of what I'm thinking about in terms of Thailand, and yeah.
But then also they can only, the BLs, and I remember with Not Me, they could only say so much, and you can only. And that's
just with Thailand, due to the kind of there's a need to self-censor on account of Thailand is still a rather illiberal country. So like, we're not talking about a society that has full freedom of the press and freedom of speech. It 100% doesn't, because I'm not even comfortable talking about the specifics of that, because who knows who could be watching, and I work in Thailand. But like, there are very strict systems of what you can and cannot talk about. So the BL industry can only address so much politically, and young people can only address so much politically. That being said, in Thailand, there's ways to speak about these things cleverly, and that's what Not Me did. That being said, at the same time, if we look at the vast majority of BL that's being produced in Thailand in 2024 and what has been successful, unfortunately, I would say that we're seeing a bit of a retreat from some of these more politically charged series, especially amongst the big players such as GMMTV. Some of the more minor players are being more risky with the content that they produce. But GMMTV is kind of retreating into what makes quick money, and that's something that I'm concerned about. I often would say back in the day that I was worried about Thailand reaching this point of saturation where the market would just be regurgitating the same thing over and over again, and we're well and truly in that moment now. So that's very sad. Like, that being said, like, no, all power to people who are enjoying these sorts of series and so forth. But from my perspective, some of the more interesting narratives that used to be explored are beginning to disappear from the industry, and that's a shame. And I think that, this is. I can't really symptomatize why it's this way. It's just that it seems to be the case that there are certain, and I'm not naming any series or anything, but I just feel that there's been a bit of a, like, 2024 in Thailand has been a bit of a year of kind of not so much interesting series as there has been in the past. That's not like an attack on the quality of acting or production or anything. Indeed, some of that's improved. I just think that the storytelling has become a little bit ho-hum. Yeah.
Let's pivot quickly to GLs because we raised you raised Gap, the series, and GMMTV's released 23.5 is producing Pluto, and there are a few other
I cannot wait till Pluto. Cannot wait till Pluto. So I'm a massive fan of Nam Tam Tipnari. So like Pluto is very high on my it's very high on my to watch list. The minute it was announced, I'm like, oh my god. 23.5. I'm going to be honest, and no shade to people who loved it and so forth. It wasn't my kind of series. I think that it was done well. I think, and more importantly, it managed to be successful for GMMTV. But it still seems to be the case that GL is kind of flourishing in the hands of different producers. So Idol Factory with their Free and Becky behemoth is really leading the charge, and we're seeing a few other companies kind of producing GL that's a little bit more sophisticated and interesting. I think GMMTV is kind of struggling to kind of understand how to use it beyond their typical. Usually it was just, they'd have a female side couple that was often implicit. I think that there's still, one of the problems GMMTV has, I think, is that they just thought, okay, well, we'll just use our BL structures and slip in two girls. That doesn't work. It needs its own kind of care and ecosystem, and that's what some of the other producers have I think worked on. Now I will say this, because of the nature of how research works and the need, like we need to specialize. So I kind of don't do work on GL. I just watch it kind of out of interest, and to those of you who are aspiring academics, maybe you can go out and do the GL work. But I also feel like I don't want to step into, I'm already a white man, like doing work on this, at least with like boys love, I have my queerness and my gender to unite me with it. Whereas like, I don't even have that with GL. It needs, I mean, to be quite blunt, it needs to be a woman who needs to do that work. So I'm just gonna not stick my nose in.
But could you paint a picture about how influential or big Gap got? Because
I mean, Gap was huge, and is huge. And Freen and Becky are like, when I was in, so I attended, when I was in Bangkok, I attended the streaming, the live first episode streaming of a BL series called This Love Does Not Need Long Beans or something, from Change 2561, and I'm actually watching that because I quite like it, and partly because I went to the live streaming. But at the same time, so that was at the big fancy cinema at the top of Siam Paragon, which is like the fanciest mall in Bangkok after Icon Siam, that is. So whilst I was attending that, there was also a screening of Freen Becky's new sci-fi girls' love movie, Uranus 2 something, I can't remember the name. And that was like, we had like two big fan camps tied to like BL and GL in the same space, dominating that large theater. Now they were mutually, they were exclusive groups. So they weren't like, there wasn't cross-pollination going on, but that's because the screenings are at the same time. But Free and Becky are really big in Thailand, and not so big as, say, so for instance, one of the things I talk about is how BL actors have become a big deal in Thai advertising culture, and you can just move through the city and see them advertising everything. Free and Becky are beginning to move in that direction. So there were a few ads that I saw that was either one or the other. So it was either Freen or it was Becky, but never together. And that's partly just speaks to one of the things that the GL industry has to deal with in Thailand that the BL industry doesn't is misogyny, right? So the extra factor that GL has to deal with as an industry is that not only is it transgressive in terms of sexuality, it's also transgressive in terms of what is expected of women in Thai society, and there's still a reticence on behalf of some kind of mainstream powers that be to kind of have female couples advertising things in society, but it's very popular at a kind of subcultural level. So like it's growing, and I think that we'll probably see, 6-7 years ago, I wouldn't have said that it was possible to have male couples advertising literally anything in Thailand in mainstream kind of and using homoerotic kind of tactics to do that advertising is the important thing. So who knows, maybe give 2 more years or so, GL couples like Free and Beck will also be similarly really in a big way. I would say this, for both of the fandoms are predominantly women. Once again, I always say it's important not to kind of assume anything about those people's sexuality, but it does seem to be still a predominantly woman-focused fandom culture. But this isn't abnormal within the context of consumer culture, which tends to be driven by female consumers anyway. So it's always important to keep that in mind, especially in Thailand. I don't know, like I was there at the tail end of Pride Month, so I was able to see some of the Pride kind of Bangkok went all out, but like they had everything from BL and GL couples advertising things and kind of speaking to Pride, to like Siam Square had a tie-in with Teletubbies, which means that Teletubbies are finally like officially queer.
Oh, they were on Drag Race.
Yeah, I know. It's great. So like Tinky Winky's finally out of the closet. This is it. It was like a really interesting moment. Yeah. So GL is growing still, and is only getting more and more popular, as indeed it should.
Let's circle back to marriage equality and the flow-on effects in the BL industry potentially, because we've seen it already start to come up in shows. So we're kind of envisioning stories that involve that as the end game a bit more. But also soon after marriage equality was passed, Mew and Tool came out as a couple. And I
shocking
think
no one.
Yeah.
I think there was because are they retired or they're not as involved in the BL industry as actors, they have that freedom to come out, or is that?
I mean, I think that I first of all, I think that it would be very naive not to think that they're going to suddenly have a series together, because that's how Thailand works. They always mentioned, they've been hinting around this for a long time. Everyone in Thailand knew that Tun and Mew were same-sex, like attracted, were members of the LGBTQ plus community. It was like there's a whole bunch of like glass closets in Thailand. Everyone knows. So it was this moment of waiting for them to kind of finally speak to who they are. I have great respect for them, and I think that it's really good that they speak to some of the problems that are beginning to emerge around shipping culture, because one of the things that I've become increasingly concerned by is the rise of antisocial shipping practices. So I want to flag that not all shipping is not by definition antisocial, and I think that that's a really important caveat to begin any discussion of what is and is not appropriate behavior, because as long as it's guided by a recognition in the fantasy performative element of the relationship that's being performed by the kujin, as we call them in Thai, imagined couples, that's okay. But what we are seeing increasingly is a sense of proprietary ownership, or the idea that people shouldn't be moving across ships, or that ships cannot end, which doesn't organically speak to how people live their lives. So one of the things that was really quite heartbreaking about when Mew and Tun kind of came out in Goi Natty Dream is speaking about the fears and the concerns that they had about their decision to go live with their relationship and how it would impact kind of like the shippers. And I take great issue with the ways in which Mew has in the past rather simplistically and problematically thrown words of like queer baiting around, not really understanding what they are. But I think that these are very legitimate concerns, and now we're reaching a stage where the industry needs to create mechanisms to end ships. And we've seen GMMTV experimenting with this, releasing announcements where they talk about how there's a mutual decision between particular couples, Perth and Shimon, for instance, and of course, famously, most recently, finally, Nanon making an announcement saying we're not going to work together anymore as an official couple, right? And this is something that I think is necessary, because there needs to. It's about reinforcing the idea that yes, these people are performing for you, and it's creating a kind of content for you to consume. But you need to understand that like it's performative, right? And that it's about feeding a fantasy, and the basically, if you're going to engage in shipping content, your responsibility is to not fall into the delusion of believing that it's real. And we're increasingly seeing people falling into that delusion and acting in extraordinarily antisocial ways. For me, like especially one of the big things that I've noticed recently in international fandom, more so than Thai domestic fandom, but it's still happening in Thailand as well, is we're seeing like ship wars between couples at the same agency. Like, why are they giving this person more time than my other couple? And it's becoming really toxic. And I just want every fan who is engaging in that sort of behavior just to kind of sit back and kind of reflect on how antisocial that is and how proprietary that is. And just to remember that this is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be playful. It's supposed to be fantasy. These idols are performing for you a service, and they have every right as autonomous individuals in charge of their own career to decide that they want to stop, right? And that's okay. So I think that this is something that I've been really worried about. And one of the things I'm really worried about is that there are companies who are turning a blind eye to this sort of behavior because they're more worried about making money than they are in the health and well-being of their stars and the health and well-being of their fandom. So I think that what the Mew Tun kind of coming out narrative gives me is not so much about like saying that they're doing something that is like is to kind of see how it allows us to reflect on what is and is not appropriate behavior. But I think that it's important to remember that the BL industry in Thailand is more so than any other shipping context in the world, highly structured by rules and expectations. And in that sense, as long as you follow those rules and expectations, the golden rule being this is fantasy, don't think it's real, then I don't think that the industry itself is inherently kind of ethically problematic. But what we're seeing now is more and more fans who lack the cultural or industry-specific knowledge to negotiate and understand what those rules are. And they're increasingly engaging in antisocial behavior. And a lot of what I see here is that people are drawing upon other fandom cultures, K-pop, for instance, and projecting. So this is where the whole like ship war nonsense comes from, because people are drawing upon the norms of K-pop fandom where you fight about who's the most important group. And then they project it onto the Thai BL industry, and it doesn't work, because why fight against fans of a fellow idol couple that works at the same company and they're all friends. It's really silly and immature, like, is the other thing that I want to say. But yeah, so I don't know if that answers your question, but this is kind of what I'm thinking about recently as well. The need for more fan management on behalf of companies and a lot more explicit messaging about what is and is not appropriate. But most companies aren't motivated to do that because they know that it will hit into their short-term profits. But there's the caveat, like, you know, short-term profits versus sustainable industry long-term, you know.
But I've seen some of the Kunjin themselves kind of not fight back, but push back.
Oh, no. I mean, I think fight back is a really good term. One of the beautiful things about Thai celebrity culture is that these guys and women, they're not like super managed, hyper controlled idols like in other industries like Japan or South Korea. They have their social media is not managed by anyone. It's just them on the internet, and if they get annoyed, they're going to clap back, and some of them are clapping back beautifully and kind of calling out bad behavior. And it's been really interesting to see some of the somersaults and backflips that some fans engaged in antisocial fandom behavior do to try and justify the ways in which they behave. But when the idol themselves tells you, you've gone too far, this is not okay, that's a moment when you need to sit and kind of reflect on your behavior and think, okay, so this person is telling me that I behaved poorly. That doesn't mean dig in and then continue to blame the idol. That means reflect, self-reflect. I'm not going to name any particular instances because, once again, I don't want to attract people who are being antisocial. But like, I really think that some people need to sit back and to put it into fandom slang, touch some grass. Like, seriously, there's a lot of immaturity in the fandom right now. And like, it really saddens me because when I first started doing work on Thai BL fandom, it was a very happy, productive, transformative place. And I'm disappointed to see it becoming a space where people aren't happy. Like, if this stuff is not making you happy, why are you watching it? That's really, like, seriously, like, maybe it's time to disengage for your mental health.
Yeah, I'd get back to when I originally got into like Thai BLs, because a gay Thai man watched a series and he experienced fan, and he was just like, he wants to share it with me.
Yeah.
And so he was like, look at this, look at this, look at this. Yeah. And there was this joy. It's not like, hey, this you have to protect this.
Yeah. So this is, I feel like some of the celebratory writing that I've done about like the transformative potentials of Finn as a kind of effective force within Thai BL fandom, like, this is intense emotionality, and it's some I think that some people are kind of having trouble negotiating, riding those emotional waves, and yeah, and as I said, like, the minute that fandom, any fandom, becomes something that doesn't bring you joy, when when it doesn't spark joy, throw it away. But really, like, if you're engaging in fandom and you are finding yourselves mostly engaged in like attacking other people, or getting really stressed out about like the ways in which people are hating on your favorite idol and so forth, that is a time to step back and really reflect on whether it is a healthy and safe environment for you. And like, that's not at all like to kind of like say that fandom produces this sort of behavior in everyone, but some people may find themselves in situations where it becomes harmful to their flourishing rather than kind of growing of their flourishing as people. And when that happens, it's really time to take stock. And sometimes reflecting on ourselves is a hard thing to do. And I'm mentioning this because I've been through that process when I was younger. Like, I know what it's like. I've been involved in fandoms where I felt myself becoming toxic, and I've had to withdraw, and that was better for me. And I think that every fandom, like, you know, if you need to step away, step away.
Do you think it's well, I don't know. Also about the ages of these certain fandoms, certain parts of the fandom, and it's acting immature, even though
I would love to say that it's just all these young kids being silly, but like, I can empirically tell you, no, like, it's not generational. Some people, it's like, I don't think that it's demographic in any way, shape, or form. I just think that it's something that's happening, and it's partly because, especially because this is being expressed on social media, and social media thrives and runs on outrage.
Yes.
And it facilitates this particular way of behaving, because that's how the powers that be monetize our emotions. So it pushes you towards negative emotions because that's easier to monetize. So that's why, like, as I say, it's kind of flippant to say touch grass, but it actually sometimes disengaging is important. Yeah. So no, I don't think it's about, like, I kind of think that it's too simplistic once again to say, oh, all of these young kids are getting involved in the fandom and hence everyone's becoming silly. No, because that removes the agency of young people to be rational and like interesting people. And two, I use the word immature, and that's because the ways in which people are behaving are reflective of not their actual biological age. Young kids aren't immature in the sense, like, you know, like, I've seen people who are adults and like well and truly like in my age or above who behave in antisocial ways. Like, it's not an age thing. It's not a gender thing. It's not a national thing. It's just, yeah. When the emotions become so heightened, some people just have trouble managing their emotions. That's how I would frame it, I think. Yeah. And as I said, I've been there. Like, I'm not perfect. I've been there.
Yes, it sounds definitely hard to navigate the idea of fantasy when there are carrots at the end of the donkey that are real couples, right? Like, now that there's mutual, you're kind of like, it could be anybody. Anybody.
I mean, as I think I've said to you guys in previous previous streams, there are real couples involved in the industry, and they don't come out for various different reasons. But that's not what the point of engaging and enjoying with this stuff is about. It's not about like how like, are they real or not? Like, that's if that's how you're engaging with it, you're engaging with it incorrectly, to put it bluntly. So I don't think that Mew and Tun coming out is going to, like, I mean, they're not an example of it's not Max Tun that's come out or Mew Golf that's come out, right? It's a couple that wasn't involved in the industry, though they're two BL actors. What I would put to you is that it demonstrates that many of the men involved in BL are not as straight as people seem to project onto them. So that's one thing that I think that's important. I mean, I remember seeing so many, like, back in the day, people claiming that Tun, of all people, was like queer baiting and straight and blah blah blah, and like, come on, right? Like, this clearly demonstrates that most of you don't have a good gaydar.
I also like us bringing over, oh, that's gay, that's straight, like, also kind of like domestic societies and domestic knowledge about which sexuality is and isn't, and what gender is and isn't, is totally different. And we're like anachronistic and anachronistic in our like analysis and also viewing of things, and it's just kind of like
It is, and it's important to note that Thailand historically has a very, very different way of understanding gender and sexuality to the quote unquote West. And that's even assuming that the West is united in the way it thinks about these things, which it isn't. and like I absolutely agree. Like that's, I mean, once again, like worrying about the sexuality of the performers is itself breaking the contract. Like the whole point is that it's fantasy, right? And fantasy is hard to navigate. Fantasy is hard to navigate. Like I'll admit that. But yeah, as long as you keep the ideas of do no harm and don't become deluded in front of your mind as the two guiding principles, I think that you can engage with this stuff in a healthy way. What role the industry plays in this? As I said, like the industry has, like Thai BL fandom has implicit rules that if you are brought up within the kind of fandom culture and familiar how it works, you know what the limits are. The thing is that as more and more people find out about Thailand and BL and aren't familiar with the norms of the Thai BL industry and how it's emerged and what its functions are, like that, those implicit rules become kind of neglected. And this is why one of the things that I'm kind of emphasizing here is that I think that there needs to be a lot more explicit management of fandom, telling people what is and is not okay, kind of emphasizing what the roles are. But companies aren't willing to do that because they're worried about upsetting lucrative markets. Yeah. It's complicated, and there's never going to be, I mean, there's never going to be perfect fandom or perfect industries because perfection doesn't exist, right?
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. I'm definitely following along with this. I'll do some reading later.
No, you won't.
I won't. I definitely share a lot of delusion in series and go, oh, this seems very convincing. And then part of it is like,
I think so. To me, it's like how good is their chemistry is really what I'm interested in. But like chemistry is something that can be, you know, they're actors. It's their job. You know, they perform it, right?
Pretend.
Yeah, and that's how I approach it. Like, and so when I see good chemistry between people, then my brain is like, well, they're really good they're as a couple, they act well together, right? That's how I think about it. I don't then go say, something must be going on behind the scenes.
It's so great to be logical and rational, like the rest of us. But you're predicting a mutual series. What is that an evolution, or is that some sort of new?
I just think that they'll do something together, whether it be variety show or drama. I don't know, but like they just to put it bluntly, they'd be really stupid if they didn't, because like they'd be able to make a lot of money from it. So that's my only kind of caveat.
I watched Love Is Like a Cat earlier this year.
The Korean one with Mew.
Yeah.
Watched it.
Yeah, it wasn't for me. It wasn't for me or anybody who watched with me. So it was different. So,
I was just gonna say, like, there's this, as I said, I just haven't watched it because there's too much going on for me to watch it all. I have no strong feelings about, like, I'll be blunt and I'll be honest. Like, I've always respected like Tun and Max Tun and so forth, but like I've never been super into them, like some people are. So I think that they're good actors and they had good chemistry. It's just that the series that they were in and the stories that they were being that they were telling never really resonated with my particular interests. So I don't have any strong feelings about Tun as an actor. I like him as an activist. I think he's been a great activist. Mew, likewise. I have no strong feelings about the series that he's been in many ways. Well, I actually, sorry, I tell a lie. I have very strong feelings about What the Duck, the series, but I think everyone shares my that series was just awful. But that was early enough that like nothing was good back then.
Right. So we have to contextualize and set it in the context.
Yeah,
It
the moment
was
that it was released. Like,
it was
and when
the
I say nothing was
tastiest.
good, I'm being facetious. But yes, yeah. So that's these are my thoughts. I have no, like, to put it in the strongest terms, I have no strong feelings about Mutun. And I wish them well. I think that they'd be really silly if they don't try and monetize their relationship, particularly within the marketplace that is Thailand. But it's up to them to choose whether they want to participate within that marketplace, and they certainly have the right to say no. Of course they do. Though I don't, knowing them, I don't think they will.
But that's like a different sensation, is it? If it's not fantasy for them, it's still a storyline, but like.
Well, so this is the thing. We can fantasize about real people because we don't know them.
Yeah.
Not really. And anything that they do is performative.
Yeah.
Not, like, so they're no more real than anyone else, I would say. Like when people sit around and like read celebrity gossip magazines, I'm thinking about, like, you know, back in the day when women would be reading those trashy magazines, tabloid magazines, about who's dating which, like, star and whatnot. It's the same thing. That's still fantasy work. It's still kind of shipping in some regards. It just has a kind of like, we know that they're real, but then you like get like, it's like I think about like Brangelina. Everyone loved like Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, and then it turns out he was like some abusive asshole, right? And we don't know that behind the scenes. So it's the same. It's the same thing. We don't know these people, and every instance we see them, they are on a stage. Like, and when I say a stage, like, it's a figurative stage. And they're always performing because we are always performing. Humans perform. That's how we engage with each other. Yes, Goffman. Yeah. We won't go down that story, but yes, like, we're always performing.
Let's move on from Thailand, but before we do, is there anything else, any other series or anything you want to bring up before we move on from Thailand?
People should watch Only Boo.
I already did. Watched it.
Why didn't people like Only Boo?
I didn't watch it.
What? Everybody on the watch party liked it.
Yeah, that's my one kind of like, I think deserved a little bit more love. It's a rough around the edges, sure, but it deserved more love.
But for me, and this is my just opinion, whatever, but I really, and I still liked it, and it was great.
Yeah.
I got like my school president feels about it, or it just made me feel the same way. But then, of course, they moved on beyond.
Yes.
Spoiler alert! Moved beyond high school and stuff like that, and
Yes.
so it was very interesting. But then I think also, well, you said they were activism, but it was talking about how the stars kind of were allowed to have a life and not, and stuff like that. So that was
I think that Team Po is going to be really interesting from that perspective. That's the William S. series. I'm looking forward to that one. From that perspective. But yeah, Only Boo, watch Only Boo. Give love to C and give love to Keen. That's just me being that was like a little bit of a silly guilty pleasure of mine. I enjoyed it, and I
it was enjoyable, totally enjoyable.
Yeah. And
is there any significance to the Taegun kiss, or was that just a
kiss?
You know, the Taegun kiss on the live, and then there was a meltdown over that.
That was just that's antisocial fandom. That's just antisocial fandom. Who wouldn't kiss Gun? Yeah.
All right, let's go to a different country. Japan. You've been watching a lot of Japanese BLs.
I have been watching a lot of Japanese BLs, and that's partly because some of my research has taken me back to Japan, but also, and I was saying this before we went live, they're shorter, so like I can just kind of watch them and not have to dedicate as much time because I'm very time poor right now. So I've been really kind of enjoying a few like BLs from Japan this year. I'm really into right now. I hear the sunspot. Sorry.
Yep.
Like I really enjoyed that, and also what was the other one that I really liked with Robin and Makoto?
Love is better the second time around.
Yes, that's the one. Sorry, I was trying to remember the English name.
That was fascinating because I watched Robin in a reality TV show on Netflix, and I was like,
oh, really?
no, yes, he was in Is She the Wolf? Like, it's a show about semi-celebrities dating, and there are two female contestants who are there to essentially trick them into love, but it wasn't really a trick for them. It was
yeah. I was more like, because there was like idols, and I'm doing work on idols right now, so I was like, ooh, like Makoto and Aloha, and like I really like that series, just because it was fun, and yeah, I don't know, like I've just been finding Japanese BL a little bit easier to watch, though I would say that like if you're looking for deep and meaningful shows with like strong political messaging, Japanese BL is probably not for you, but with the caveat that like within the context of some of these shows, they cover these sorts of issues just kind of organically. The thing about Japanese BL is that BL within the Japanese marketplace kind of still exists within a space of being like, traditionally it's kind of just considered to be a love comedy. So they're kind of like rom-coms in the way that their stories are told. Though, you know, Love is Better the second time round was a bit darker in some regards. Darker is maybe not the right word, but it was certainly not like a love comedy. But like I'm just like watching them because they're kind of cute and fun and relaxing when I'm really busy. I haven't watched Osan's Love though, and probably won't, just because not for me. And I would flag that the most recent episode, like series of Osan's Love, Osan's Love Returns, or the fourth one, received quite a lot of heavy criticism from LGBTQ plus activists in Japan in particular, because it was doing almost exactly the opposite of what we were talking about with regards to marriage equality in Thailand, in the sense that it was focusing on it specifically as a symbol and talking about there not being a need for like formalized marriage and so forth. And that really upset a lot of activists in Japan. And I happen to agree. Like, I think that was poor decision on behalf of the people who create that story, and then that's partly because it was aligning with some Japanese understandings of what that genre is and can do, and the idea being that the love is so powerful and pure that it can overcome social norms. So from that perspective, it's like, oh, we don't need marriage because like we've overcome that social norm, like, and that's a kind of political statement within the Japanese context. But for many activists who have been really pushing for marriage equality in Japan, like it was a misfire. That was not what's needed right now. So it's kind of a complicated kind of series, and it led to a huge debate in Japan about whether BL should be a genre purely for entertainment or whether it should be socially conscious, which was regurgitating and resuscitating a debate that had already happened in the 90s over BL, whether it had to accurately reflect political life and discrimination and so forth. So that debate is ongoing. But I will say this, the majority of the BL that I've been watching from Japan is not like this socially progressive, engaged form. I've mostly been just watching stuff that allows me to just enjoy the romance and some of the sex and like the characters and the like, and that's okay. BL's allowed to do that, and we're allowed to engage with it from that perspective as well. And I just have felt that the Japanese BL series recently have improved a lot in terms of their content and quality. But mainly it's because they're shorter. Like, I'll be 100% honest, that's one of the main reasons why I'm watching them. It's interesting because like a lot of international fans are always pushing like, we want longer shows, and I'm kind of like, well, like there was one series I can't even remember what it was, and there was like episodes of like an hour and 20-30 minutes long. I'm just like, oh my god, why is it so long? Oh, it's The Sign. I mean, like, I loved it, but like each episode was like a marathon.
I always gravitate towards Japan because, like, I honestly feel that sometimes with the Thai BLs, it's like they're always 12 episodes, and I'm like, this could have been an email. We could just.
There's a lot of
right.
Like, it happens a lot in Thai BL productions. A lot.
They could have like taken off about 4 episodes and have been fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I get that. It's very interesting because also right now one of the Japanese series that I'm watching is actually the GL. Ayaka Loves Hiroko, and it surprised me because all of a sudden I thought it was going to be the like comedy.
Speaking of people who don't have gaydars, but yes.
Right. Okay, so you've seen it. And then they start talking about this gendered and also the patriarchal system, and all of a sudden work and all this other kind of stuff, which was, I was like, wow. It's really like saying this in this series and actually going against that and actually being afraid to come out and why to come out, and especially where you work, and then also women can't get ahead. And I was like, in a Japanese series, what?
So it's interesting because like drama, or dorama, if you will, like, you know, Japanese TV shows, you know, they're predominantly produced for and consumed by women, right? Like it's and the vast majority of it is in the escapist mode that we've been talking about. However, there's like a really long tradition of from the 90s onwards of like dramas in Japan kind of exploring what in the 80s we would call the woman question. So like looking at the experiences and like the hardships that women face, and like women in Japan are like the structural hardships they face are immense, right? Like Japan is no like feminist paradise, far from it. So it's not actually surprising to me that a series that is specifically looking at the love between women would choose to also explore other issues that are of feminist interest around, you know, the work, especially because it's a workplace drama, right? Because there's a long tradition of workplace dramas exploring these issues, whereas there isn't a long tradition of dramas exploring these within the context of the male homosocial sphere, right? Because the male homosocial sphere in the world of work in Japan is kind of considered sacrosanct, and there's very little kind of pushback against that. So that's why we have series like Cherry Magic Japan, which is great, loved it, like silly, fun, but they're not going to look at like questions of like, what does it mean for us to be a couple in the company and blah, 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 blah. Even in the movie version, like that's because that's not normal within Japanese media. It's not saying that there shouldn't be, there absolutely should be. And there have been isolated incidents of this. But within like texts that focus on women's experiences, such as, what do they call it in English? Ayaka meets Hiroko.
Sorry. Ayaka Loves Hiroko.
Yeah. Okay. So like, it's kind of, it would resonate with the kind of, they're thinking about who is the normal viewer who's going to watch this. Women who face all sorts of discrimination, whether they're lesbian or not, or like bisexual or not. So let's use this story to think about those barriers. Whereas BL in Japan still is at that stage. It's like, oh, look at these people cooking for each other. as a way to show their domesticity. I haven't watched it yet, but I want to watch the recent series, and I don't think that there's an official release, but about the young guy and the older middle-aged man. And
Yeah.
I really want to watch that because I as the meme on I'm a big fan of so-called old man yaoi when it comes to the stuff that I read, and I just really I'm really curious to see how that's been explored. But I also don't want to pirate. So this is the thing. I'm so time poor that I'm not motivated to pirate things anymore. I'm just gonna put it out there. So if it's not available for me on a streaming service, I just don't watch it anymore. So if something's been geo-blocked, I don't watch it. But
That's so interesting. Sorry, that you were saying. I find a lot of Japanese BLs deep and meaningful, but I guess there's a difference between social and political commentary. But the things about Osan's love.
So what I mean, it's in Japanese we call this what they call shakaiha. So it means it's engaging with political and social questions. So I also find it deep and meaningful in the sense that it allows me to explore romantic feelings and emotionality and so forth. But when we talk about the debate in the Japanese language debate context is specifically focused on questions of social issues and whether BL should reflect and engage and respond to them, and that this is like a fundamental kind of question about what role media should play. So I don't want to kind of emphasize to people if people enjoyed Osan's Love Returns and found the kind of relationship between the two characters meaningful on a personal level, that's fine. But I'm merely pointing out that within the context of Japan, the series was heavily criticized for its kind of retreat from addressing social issues that at the moment are really pressing social issues. They released that series with statements around overcoming the need for formal marriage at a moment in time when marriage equality and issues of LGBTQ plus discrimination were incredibly and continue to be debated in social life. And also then that allowed people to then kind of use it as an example of why BL is bad for LGBTQ plus people, and that's disappointing from some regards. So that's where that comes from. That's the context for that comment. Not my stance, the stance of the debate that was happening in Japan. I didn't watch it, so I have no comment. I have no feelings whatsoever. But it's not my kind of show because I watched the first series and it's I just found it silly.
Yep,
it was silly.
I'm not really into. I don't watch BL that's comedic. It's not my interest. When they try and make it funny, like Middleman's Love or something, I just shut it down immediately.
One of the biggest things that has happened in Japan recently, obviously, is the Netflix The Boyfriend. Yes. It's probably the most popular queer dating show that's come out from Asia, I feel like.
No, I mean it's on Netflix, right? So unlike His Man or the Sparks Camp or something like that, it's much. I mean, Sparks Camp is technically easily accessible, but anyway, but so because it's on Netflix and it has the juggernaut of Netflix behind it, it was able to be promoted and became hugely successful. In the same way that I mean, Netflix is thinking about this as being the next Singles Inferno, right? That's where they're coming from. And yes, it's been a really interesting kind of experience to see people come to learn a little bit more about what it means to be gay man in Japan, dating life and so forth. I thought it was kind of I'm not a big fan of reality dating shows, just going to put it out there. But even I found that it was kind of sweet, and kind of enjoyed watching it from that perspective. What I really enjoyed watching was the ways in which people were becoming invested in the relationships, and the ways in which we're seeing kind of like a kind of debate emerge over, like, is it appropriate to ship or not, like, these couples, and like, how do you engage, and is it like, so some people going like, you're shipping Shun and Dai, and that's unhealthy because they're real people, and yet Shun and Dai have now just created a like, their YouTube channel that is 100% designed to get people to follow and celebrate their relationships, and like, once again, it leads to interesting questions about like, what is, like, as a practice, what is shipping, and where does it kind of draw the line, and how is it produced, and so for me, that was a really interesting kind of development to see. I have no value judgments on how people engage with it whatsoever, to be quite honest. I think that like, I did see some silly kind of ships about, like, kind of statements about like, oh, look at how, there was the famous kiss between Shun and Dai in the bed, and like, some people were trying to read into that about who was top and who was bottom. That's silly. Like, that's immature, right? But I don't think that emerges from people who are shippers or BL fans necessarily, because like, some people are just like that. I know plenty of gay men involved who don't watch BL, who are obsessed with who is a bottom and who is not a bottom, and like, they would make similar sorts of judgments. It has nothing to do with whether you're a BL fan or not. It doesn't make it okay. It's childish, but like, once again, it's an immature judgment to make, but it doesn't stem from someone being a shipper or being a BL fan. I think that that's a prejudicial sort of read of what's going on. Especially because, I mean, the whole show is about following and celebrating and romanticizing about these people's relationships. That's shipping, right? So yeah, it's interesting. I would say this. What I thought was a bit disappointing to me is that they didn't, like, there was a lot of like, kind of cross-cultural, interracial stuff going on in the boyfriend, because not everyone was, like, some of them were half Korean, one of them was from Brazil, etc. They didn't explore that as much as I would have liked. And also, because I am a very sad person, I wanted to see more about the coffee truck. So like, yeah, they're supposed to be dating, but they're also supposed to be running that business.
I mean, they always put up like how much they made each day.
Yeah. But I wanted to see more like business stuff. As I said, that's because I'm a sad person. And I will flag, and I'm not going to mention who, but I knew some of them from my research networks. So it was a bit weird watching in that regard as well, because they're friends of friends and things like that. But yeah, other than that, it was interesting. And I do hope that we get more of these sorts of shows. Though personally, I enjoyed His Man more. Though the whole concept of like, oh, you're going to date after 7 days together, blah, blah, it's silly. But that's dating shows.
But His Man is 7 days. What do you?
That's what I mean. Like the whole like concept.
Oh, you like the silliness of the dating?
Yeah, I just think it's silly that you're gonna like meet the one.
But
on
they
a
did.
7-day reality program, or did they? Like, this is
Oh, okay.
Like, what are they motivated? So I have a colleague who does work on dating shows in Japan, and one of her big arguments is that people participate in these shows not. I mean, this isn't at all like a revolutionary argument to make, but like, people are participating in these shows. Are they there to find romance, or are they there to spark a new career? Like, as I said, like when we see Shun and Dai, the couple that became stupidly popular because, surprise, surprise, the most conventionally attractive people on the show got together. And now they have a YouTube channel and they've signed up with talent management agencies. What was their motivation? Don't know.
Why not both? They got both.
I mean, I'll say that, yes, but like this is one of the reasons why I also look at Mewtwo and think, what are they going to do next?
I mean, you have people go on reality shows and they're like looking to start a career and they're like, okay, I'm gonna play that role, or I'm gonna be the villain, or I'm gonna do that. And then also you had Villain's House,
Yeah.
which was that role. But yeah, no, it's not.
Yeah.
And also you have the editor, the producers who edit the scenes, and all of a sudden stuff like
I mean,
that.
and this is it. Like, remember what I was saying? Everything's a stage. This is a stage. It's performed. It's like they're scripted. These shows are scripted. Always remember that they're scripted. Just loosely. That doesn't. I'm not suggesting that they're somehow faking a relationship or anything. No, I think that it's very clear that they had an interest in each other and created, and that their relationship is legitimate. I just think that their motivations may be different for just, you know, and that's fine, because that's what these shows are for. That's their function, right? They're not, the show doesn't exist for them to date. The show is to create a couple that can then be marketed. And they're willing participants in that. Like, that's fine.
Do you have any insight into perhaps the significance of Netflix acquiring the show, or what it means to broader Japanese representation?
I mean, so I think that it is significant in the context of Japan, because like one of the things that it's been able to do, and this has just been talking to my colleagues who teach, you know, undergrads in Japan, is kind of just shine a light on dating culture between men and kind of emphasize that, hey, it's just kind of normal, which in Japan is important. Because there's still a lot of, like, attitudes have changed greatly over the last decade or so towards, you know, most Japanese people are pro-marriage equality and have kind of like positive views of sexual minorities and so forth. The government is well and truly in Japan is well and truly out of step with what the general population are interested in. But there is still a fundamental ignorance that sits at the heart of what same-sex desiring people, whether they be men or women or neither of those two categories, kind of live their everyday lives and what their romantic lives look like and so forth. So in that context, the boyfriend is significant because A, by being with a mainstream streaming service, it provides accessibility, and B, it allows people to see what this sort of life looks like in ways that aren't necessarily fictional, well, fully fictional. And it kind of allows people to kind of engage with these sorts of questions for the first time. And like, I think that that's really significant in the context of Japan, where there is still to this day so little media visibility. And where media visibility does exist, it's sitting within particular subcultural spaces. So, for instance, whether it's created for gay men, like Media for Gay Men, which I've written a whole book critiquing, or BL, which sits predominantly in the Japanese context as part of women's media culture, though it's important to mention that it's read broadly. Like, this was just being produced as Netflix for content that anyone could watch, easy, fun, relaxing stuff. As I said, it's part of Netflix's commitment to broadening their production in Asia. It links to their broader interest in, like, this show is absolutely probably responding to the success of Singles Inferno coming out of Korea. And also it speaks to the rise of queer dating programs in Asia more broadly. I would say that The Boyfriend was actually more popular outside of Japan than it was in Japan, is the other thing, like from a viewership perspective. And it was particularly popular in Southeast Asia. And once again, I don't have any, like, I think that's interesting. I don't have any thoughts on that so far, but that's just interesting from a demographic perspective. Other markets where it was hugely significant was Latin America. And this is kind of speaking to broader trends in which we see East Asian media with queer themes operating in Southeast Asia and Latin America as important kind of ways in which to explore queerness more broadly. But that, yeah, it was significant as well. Like it had a decent viewership in Japan as well, of course. Though demographically, I couldn't tell you much more beyond that it was influential. And as I said, I have colleagues who've told me that their kind of university age students were watching it and it was opening their eyes to just the realities of like oh, so like, you know, they just date like normal people. I'm like, well, duh.
No, we date in coffee carts. What are you talking about?
No. I think it's more the point that in Japan, the idea is that you go to like a place like Shinjuku Nichome and the whole point is sex. Right? Yeah. So like that's well, I mean, there's a truth to that. Yeah.
Great. Let's move on to Korea because you're writing a paper, an article about City Boy Log, which I have very enjoyed.
So I have a colleague at Curtin University in Perth. Her name is Dr. Jin Lee, and we were both really interested in the City Boy Log project for a variety of different reasons. I'm interested in it obviously because of its both as from the perspective of K-pop idols and also BL, whereas my colleague Jin Lee does work on LGBTQ plus streaming culture in Korea, and of course City Boy Log is a production that seeks to bring these three worlds actually, K-pop idol, social media logs, BL, and the phenomenon of LGBTQ plus streaming into one neat little package, and it is extraordinarily innovative. When I first started watching City Boy Log and like 2J and so forth, like I was incredibly impressed by the ways in which the project was producing all sorts of different layers of meaning, playing around with audience expectations around authenticity, and I just and also the ways in which it is functioning to produce a fandom for like people who have been like, so for example, Jeju has been in the industry for years and years and years and years, like a long time, and finally is managing to kind of break out in ways that he's never been able to. So it also speaks to kind of the ways in which BL is used in Korea as a kind of promotional tool. I think that the performances are really quite fun, and yeah, the cheating storyline in season 3 is a bit lazy, but like, spoiler alert. But
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, but like, it's fine. And then I think it's really interesting that from season 4 onwards, they've signed a development deal very clearly that is allowing them to kind of produce higher production value works, though at the expense of broader accessibility, which is a shame. But this is one thing that I am happy to pirate. And I just think it's a really interesting kind of play with the question of authenticity. Like it actually asks really interesting questions around. So I know that I spend a lot of time kind of poo-pooing people who read this like BL through the question of like, is it real or not? But the whole point of City Boy Log is that it plays with that expectation, and it explores whether something is real or is not. And it's been really interesting to see the ways in which people are kind of trying to work out how to make sense of it. Like I still have people who write to me and say like, I don't get it. Like, what's going on? Is it real? Like, are they actually dating? And like, that's the question, right? Like, and that's the enjoyment. And it's, for me, that's actually a really clever piece of media. And one could even argue that it's kind of, there's a certain kind of postmodern hush, like it knows what it's doing because it's kind of like, the whole point is that it's leading you to question as you watch it, like, is this real? Is this not real? What's going on? And they had
the behind the scenes as well.
Yeah, and it's very meta. Yeah, it's very meta. And then you add on the social media component with their brilliant TikToks, and then you add on like their lives and their engagement with their fandom. Like the whole thing is a really innovative project, and like when I think about what is leading to innovation and change and transformation in the BL industry, like this is one of the projects that I think is doing something new, and that excites me. And also like they have excellent chemistry together, right? And like And there's some of the scenes are so iconic, and just the transformation of this relatively kind of hint, nudge, nudge, kind of implicit BL show. Like when I think about in the first season, when we suddenly shift gears from something that has been implicit to like them basically making out in front of us on camera, like that was such an amazing thing to do. And then like in the kind of media ecology context of South Korea, which is still extraordinarily heteropatriarchal and homonormative, and like South Korea is shockingly homophobic and transphobic. Like it is a hugely conservative society.
South Korea heard him.
Oh my god! They got Thomas. Is he okay?
South Korea was like,
they were like, call us homophobic.
We have our special internet. Oh wait,
that's the Australian internet for you, though.
See, that's weird.
What is an ARG?
What is what?
Just comments. We shall just wait for Thomas. I am so delulu over City Boy Log. Oh, there we go. I believe everything that's happening, but not really.
I just decided the internet suddenly just decided.
We were worried that yes.
This is like someone
heard you, and then they were like,
no, you said too much. Just decided that I said something wrong and decided to shut me down.
Well, we were on the subject of Korea, so
yeah. I was just gonna. My whole point that I was building towards is that it's a very brave project in the context of South Korea. I noticed, Edison, you were saying like you're delulu. Like I like once again, this is one space where I allow myself to kind of usually I really advocate not trying to like consume it from the perspective of authenticity or not, but like I'm so like invested, even though I'm sure that it's all performative, but like I'm so invested in their relationship, and that's why I think there's a post-modernity to it that's kind of fun.
I mean, I don't see it from such a scholarly perspective, but I need that. This is acting and performative to keep me from wandering too far from the baseline that is reality. So, you know, I'm like, they're using their real names, they're playing themselves, and it's all very convincing because the chemistry is so real. And so
I will never forget like when I first saw the first episode of season 3 with the condoms on the bed. I'm just like, oh my god. I was just like, yes, this is the content that I need from K-pop idols. My fan fictions have come to life.
On the question of idols, though, I think I forgot to draw this in with Japan. Following the success of Kieda Hatsukoi, was there stigma for idols playing BL active roles?
No. We've actually got this interesting pipeline that's emerged where so one of the, sometimes their fans don't like it when they're called idols, but they're idols, so I'm just going to call them idols. A production company called LDH, Exile Tribe, and so forth. That company has really decided that they're willing to put their talent into BL shows, whereas Star 2, the former Johnnies and Associates, have been a little bit more reticent after Kieda Hatsukoi. Yes, they've had some of their juniors involved, but no one who has been like kind of formally debuted yet. But like LDH is like absolutely, yeah, okay, sure, go. You want to appear in BL, and then a lot of other idol groups are also doing that. And that's brilliant. Like Cho Tokyu, Bullet Train has had a number of idols like appear in BL. But the real pipeline that's emerged is people who appear in what's called tokusatsu series. So Super Sentai, Kamen Rider, things like that. To BL pipeline is a very legitimate thing right now.
Every time I'm Googling these people, they're like a common right. I'm like, what?
Yeah, and it's like a thing. Like it's a thing. So it's considered to be kind of like this journey towards like this is how you develop your career. And not in a bad way. So it's not like this idea is like, and then you have to do BL, ha 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 ha. It's just like moving towards your next challenge is to appear in like a BL and develop your capabilities there, and then move on to your next like step. So the thing that's missing from Japan, I think, is couples that are designed to stick around. I think the only one that I think has been successful in kind of mobilizing this in Japan has been the stars of My Personal Weatherman. And that's because, and even they're not going to be coming back for something. Absolutely not. Unless there's a second season, which, there's plenty of manga left to adapt.
Following on from that, I noticed that there were some, and I know Netflix has this whole thing about, I know they have a whole bunch of programs and stuff like that coming from Japan. And, I watch it because for my Japanese learning and stuff like that. But I noticed that there was one person from a BL who was in Pending Train, and there was another guy who was in a BL, and he was on Alice in Borderlands. So it's like, just to hop on for what you were saying, like I noticed that people, and also there's one guy who was in Onson's Love, and he's in another Japanese show as a tough detective and stuff like that.
I was going to say the guys in Osan's Love are like actually quite elite actors. So like they're well and truly at the top of the like kind of A game, which is one of the good things about Osan's Love, I will say. Like is that the actors involved in that were able to like continue to appear in this show and maintain hugely successful roles. Like I will say this, I'm really looking forward to the series Soulmate starring Ok Taekyeon and what's his name from Japan? Isomaru Nantoka. Anyway, like whether it's BL or not, I don't think it's going to be formally BL, but I think that we'll get some queer storytelling as part of it for sure. And I want to emphasize the reason I make that point is that BL doesn't just mean queer show from Asia. It's more complicated than that. So, but yeah, like BL is not stigmatizing to your career trajectories in Japan or South Korea anymore. We've seen a number of rising stars in South Korea kind of get their beginnings in BL, whether that be actors, some of whom hide the fact that they appear in BL, and that's just like, I mean, I don't like it, but I understand why you would. Korea's, as I said, pretty messed up when it comes to these sorts of things. But then you've got people like Kim Ji-woong from who's in the boy group Zero Base One, who during his promotion on the Idol production show, that produced that group was very open about having appeared in 2 BL series, and likewise Park Tae-chan from DKZ, who appeared in Semantic Error this year, once again appeared in a very popular youth-oriented drama, and he was playing a queer character, and that's not so much typecasting as it is like he's willing to take on roles that in South Korea many people would shy away from because of like lingering ideas around homophobia and that he's very brave for doing that and is an important advocate within that context. So this has been quite interesting to me to see the ways in which BL is no longer a barrier to success in a mainstream career in East Asian media culture. And this is important because this was also what began to happen in the early BL years in Thailand. And now, like in Thailand, BL is mainstream. To be a BL actor is not at all stigmatized. Indeed, we're now beginning to see people from the kind of like big actors now doing a BL because like there's no longer a stigma against it, and like that's part and parcel of the transformation. So maybe Japan and South Korea's media industries are kind of slowly catching up. I think Japan is probably a little bit more likely to kind of move towards some more serious stuff. And if Netflix is investing in, I think that absolutely. Like I wonder about this series Soulmate that Netflix is producing, whether it will help kind of stimulate queer content in both of these markets a little bit more. I hope so. Yeah, but yeah, like it's no longer this idea that like the only people who will appear in BL series are like D-grade idols, which is what it used to be back in the early 2000s in Japan, like really low quality stuff, or people who yeah, like BL live action BL back in the day in Japan was just atrocious. Like I don't feel bad saying that at all. Low quality, cheap and nasty. Like whereas now it's a legitimate kind of like people are investing money into it. Actors from legitimate agencies, yeah, they may be rookies, but they're willing to take a shot, and that's only positive for the development of queer media in Asia. Like that's not a negative thing.
In Japan, it's being televised, right? There's a
Yes, yeah. I mean, like one thing, like 1 a.m. But like, that's fairly normal for these sorts of youth-oriented shows. Like, they're not. You don't watch them live. Like, you watch them on streaming services. It's always been the way.
Pivot to IQUI as a streaming service. They seem to obviously have acquired City Boy Log, and that's quite a big thing for them. And they're also producing a lot of shows themselves. Like we're watching My Stand-In. Are they kind of a big player in sort of the BL industry moving forward?
They're coming to be, yeah. I mean, like, so once again, like a lot of so streaming services have always been involved in the funding of these series in BL. Like once again, Thailand being a really good case in point. Though Taiwan, of course, like Gaga Ulala has been, like they produced their first Japanese BL this year based on a manga, Meet You at Asa. I can't remember what it's called. I watched it.
25 o'clock?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It was okay. And and they've got a whole suite of series coming out of Taiwan. Taiwan's been a bit slow this year. But I think we're going to get that. And to be fair, so has Korea. Like Korea has been a bit slow as well.
Yeah.
I think the most popular one's been Love for Love's Sake,
which is brilliant. So like and like if sorry, that's like sorry, I haven't even talked about it. That's my top pick of the year so far.
Okay.
Is Love for Love's Sake. I love it. And I also did enjoy Jazz for 2, but not as much as Love for Love's Sake. Love for Love's Sake had excellent chemistry between the main couple. Excellent chemistry. And an interesting twist at the end, plot-wise, which I won't spoil. But and good kisses. Like so this is for me that's an important point. Like I want to see like tongue. Anyway, no more like we can't like no more angles, like clever angles, no more like lip smacking. Like it's 2024.
It's not too much to ask for now.
Like you can't not give your all. Anyway, and Korea's getting better. Japan isn't, but Japan also is just like in its mainstream series have terror. Like fish lips is like just like an endemic in Japanese kind of media culture. So like they're always not going to kiss well, I'm afraid. But yeah, so sorry, I got distracted by Love for Love's Sake. What were we talking about?
We can keep going. We're just talking about how streaming services are a power, but
yeah, so the streaming
Taiwan BLs as well.
Yeah, so it's like Love No Long Beans, or This Love Doesn't Need Long Beans, or whatever it's called. I can't remember. I still need to watch the most recent episode fully. I've watched the the highlights on social media, which is the kissing and sex scenes. But like that was in Aichi invested into that. My stand-in Aichi invested into that. Rebound the series is a VU original. Likewise, 4 Minutes with BOC, which I haven't talked about because I haven't watched it because I can't access
it's inaccessible.
and I'm lazy. But that's also a VU original, and like so streaming services are investing more and more into these series because like as is indeed like Netflix content, you produce content exclusively for your streaming service so that you then get people to pay for your streaming service. iQIYI has become a huge player, which is quite interesting thinking about it historically, since it comes from PRC, though it's based out of Singapore now. VU is based out of Hong Kong, I think. Gago Lala, obviously from Taiwan, and these streaming services are becoming important players and are willing to invest money into production in order to get series off the ground, working with companies. So in the Thai context, production companies are always looking for foundational capital, right? And
what was that controversy? The comment, GMMTV were looking for writers, weren't they? They did a call out.
Don't even get me started on that. Like the GMMTV's like, we will exploit you system. Now there is actually a long history in Thailand of kind of companies asking fans to submit screenplay treatments and things like that's GMMTV is just participating in something that's considered to be normal in Thailand. It doesn't make it okay. It's exploitative. Like one of the things that really worries me about the Thai content industries, not BL in general, like, but just the content industries. I met with a lot of scholars and production types and industry people. There's a lot of exploitation, a lot. People not getting paid for work, not having enough money to pay everyone, and so forth. And this is just part and parcel of that exploitative work culture. I've been up front. I've been saying to anyone who listened to me, do not submit your stories to GMMTV. Do not do it. Like, I know that only Thai people can, but like still, like, don't do it.
They've opened it up to international.
Yeah. Oh, have they? Well, then,
yeah, I think so. That's what I remember.
I think it's Thai only. The reason, for particular labor laws.
Okay.
Yeah, just don't do it. Like, don't let a company, like, you don't even get to choose who the couple's going to be, right? Like, what's the point? Like, it's and you get like, you don't even get, like, you get like a token amount of money and then you sign away all rights. Just really stupid. But you see that there'll be people who'll do it because they don't want the money. They want the what we call social capital. So, but yes, but this issue is something that I'm a bit annoyed about. But yeah, there's all of these kinds of investments that are coming from all over the place that are helping to kind of build the industry in various different markets. And it's where there's a lack of investment that we see things turn out problematically. And I think that that's a good segue to Philippines. Because the Philippines is dominated by no money. And hence why most of the stuff that's produced in the Philippines, besides a few gems here and there, is just absolutely atrocious. And it's just because there's no money, no know-how, no support. And one of the things that I was like, I was having lots of conversations when I was in the Philippines with content producers from who are making both like Boys Love Manga and things like that, comics, but also working in the television industry. And like, you know, the Philippines, one of the things is that they need to show the powers that be that there's a market, because at the moment, the major production companies in the Philippines, after the very short boom that occurred in 2020, they're just not interested in investing anymore. And part of the problem is because there's so much stuff from overseas, And what the main Filipino content producers do is that they see what's popular, like Semantic Error, for instance, recently, and then they produce a Tagalog dub and then make that available. And that's cheaper for them, right? Than investing into producing stuff, which means all of these very, very, very small outfits, like when we call these companies that produce BL in the Philippines indies, like they're absolutely, like, some of them are just like two people with a hand camera in a room. Like they're literally really small outfits. And that's really difficult. And then, like, in order to try and build up some buzz, they release it free on some social media services like, YouTube, with very limited monetization. And then it gets swallowed up by the vast, huge sea of content. And it means that the industry is very firmly in trouble. And this is the real issue. The mainstream Filipino media are not interested in investing into this kind of content anymore, because they don't view it to have been successful. And that's a real shame. And also there's a bit of a stigma in the sense that like producing this stuff is kind of not like, it's not quality content. Like it's kind of viewed to be like, so there's like a class kind of attitude in the Philippines that's emerging, that like, if you are wealthy and cosmopolitan and elite as a queer person, then you watch global BL series, whereas the cheap and nasty stuff that's produced in the Philippines is for people who are poor and have no access to global media. And that's very representative of Philippine kind of social attitudes, and it's really, really problematic. So as long as there's a stigma against local content because it's tied to like the local as something that is like poor and low quality, then the content industries are never going to invest into it. And that's just that was one of the really sad things I learned as I was talking to media producers, is the ways, like the ways in which they were stigmatizing local content and also stigmatizing local audiences. Like, oh, that's like, they would be saying things like, oh, you see, like, that's just good for the provincianos, like the people who live out in the provinces. Like whereas we Manilaites with our sophisticated global tastes, Thai BL, Japanese BL, Korean BL, that's for us. And that's like a really, really sad reality. I was like really like quite shocked when I first heard people talking about that.
It was very, not to like get into your book because we're saving that for another time. I remember we were having the one of your interviews with one of the gay Filipino guys. Well, this is back in 2000. He's like, we're watching Thai because Filipino BL isn't here. And now, especially after the whole big boom and stuff like that, and actually I love Filipino BL, and I'm happy that there's going to be a Game Boys New York. And then also, I even watched
everything. I was going to say everything. Like there's a few series that are inoculated against some of this, and Game Boys is one of them.
right.
So yes, you've hit the nail on the head. There's a paradox here, right? So people will say, well, I like initially it's like Thai BL. Like I watched Thai BL because we didn't have this locally. Now it's, I still watch Thai BL because the local stuff is so poor quality. And it's not that the local stuff is poor quality or not. It's that they're projecting a particular, like there's a long, there's a book actually called Under Bright Lights by a Filipino studies scholar named Bobby Benedicto, who talks about the ways in which LGBTQ culture, but particularly gay male culture in the Philippines, is particularly structured in these kind of classist terms that initially looked to the West to kind of build up cosmopolitan kind of values, and then to kind of separate themselves from the domestic local context. And
Under Bright Lights, I'm sorry.
Under Bright Lights. So my current book project, which is looking at Japan and Korean fantasy media is saying that what I'm interested in is the ways in which like these sorts of fantasies are being projected onto East Asia now, but still it's predicated on a kind of looking down upon or a denial of the local. Because this need to demonstrate in Philippine society, there's this very strong kind of classist stigma that sits within places like Metro Manila that look to the poor, look to the common people, and then try to demonstrate one's separation from that through demonstrating that one is a global or worldly citizen, and hence the local, the Filipino, becomes a site of like that becomes a problematic site that needs to be escaped from. And hence, when the powers that be, the media industries, are well aware of this trend, they're not going to invest into a local BL industry, because the BL industry of the Philippines is always already tied to what globally wealthy cosmopolitan consumers want to escape. And that's a significant issue when it comes to the development of BL in the Philippines. So when I was at BL fan events in the Philippines, or when I was kind of speaking with artists, like their big message is you must consume local BL, because to consume it is a political act, and this is necessary right now, because we're not going to change the system like things happened in Thailand, for instance, if we avoid our own media culture. And that was a hugely emphatic message that the BL creators and GL creators and queer activists and artists were saying in the Philippines. To like, I went to a BL convention in the Philippines where everything was focused on East Asian BL media, right? Like there was nothing that was local except for a few artists who had been strategically invited by the organizers. I mean, I'll be honest, I was there to talk about Korean BL culture. And like that was what people were interested in. But we often were saying, like I was often asked questions like, how can we build up like a BL culture that's as rich and like politically powerful as Korean BL or Thai BL in the Philippines? And the only answer I can give is like, you need to consume the local stuff. You need to invest into your own industry. And you need to like support it. And like, that's the only way forward. And I like, and I'm saying this not because like I'm the external person looking in, like I'm just explaining to you what the industry people have told me. So like it's a very sad reality, unfortunately. Though I would say that there are still quality issues. Like so Filipino BL series, the vast majority of them, there's quality issues. And I can get why for some people, like when there's high quality series being produced elsewhere, why you would choose to watch that. And it's like a kind of a catch-22 in many ways. So yeah. So and like I'll say this, like I have trouble watching Filipino BL series because some of them are really bad. Like and then that's just because they lack investment. And then this comes down to like, why do you watch BL? Is it pleasure or is it politics? Like, and if you're just watching it for the emotionality or the support that it gives you, or because you're tied to a particular fandom community, then you're not going to be motivated to watch a poor quality product in order to make your industry develop. It's like there's all of these really big issues. And I don't know how to solve that problem. And I don't think it's my job to solve that problem, right? As well. One of the problems of being a social scientist and an anthropologist, I just merely describe what's happening and make sense of it. I'm not supposed to try and project towards the future. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't mean DC hold Filipino BLs dear to our heart. I think from the people that we've talked to, a few Filipino BLs were the gateway into BL, and it was something, there was the boom in the, when was it, 2020? When Game Boys came out, Gaya sa Peluca, Hello Stranger. and more. And so I guess, yeah, it does sound unfortunate that since then the BLs that have come after have not lived up to that
there
initial.
was a recent series that was getting some decent hype. Maha something project.
Well, yeah, we watched the Mata
Yeah.
Huyo project, and that was really lovely. I think
Yeah.
Filipinos
Yeah.
BLs have their own
Yeah.
charm to it that I
Yeah.
wouldn't find anywhere else personally.
I mean, and I'd say that all that's true of all like industries, right? Like, and this is so I did see some people kind of mentioning this particular series as a return to form, but at the same time, the vast majority of what I've seen, I've not been able to commit to more than 10 minutes, like usually, and that's it's sad. That being said, I will say this: Filipino like BL and GL graphic comic culture. Like I'm usually someone who prefers the 3D over the 2D, as we call it in Japan. But I'm really a big fan of BL in its kind of graphic novel form coming out of the Philippines. I think that there's some excellent graphic novels. Problem is that most of them are written in like Tagalog, so yeah, and they're not translated yet. But I recently one that I would really like to shout out was that there's this Comic Head is what they call. They're an organization in the Philippines, and they put together an anthology of BL last year called Ala Paap, and it's really beautiful. Lots of different stories, lots of different narratives, and they recently released a GL anthology called Gigil this year. So like, I think that's really cool. And actually, GL is like, I think sapphic stories coming out of the Philippines are pretty good. But yeah. Anyway.
The last frontier we have not really touched is Taiwan, but as you said, they haven't really produced anything.
Taiwan's been slow this year. Though there's like there's a new series that's come out. I usually don't watch the Taiwanese shows just because, and the Chinese language shows, because I often just kind of, I think I've said this to you guys before, like I had to draw a line, and I kind of drew a line around those series just because I needed to limit what I was watching because there was so much. But I kind of, because I have been a little bit kind of not so interested in what's coming out of Thailand this year, for instance, besides a few recent series, I might give some of these new Taiwanese shows a watch. I remember there was one that was quite popular, a Taiwanese BL series from this year. I didn't watch, but it was like, I don't know, what was it called?
Nothing that I watched has come to mind.
Oh, was that last year? No. I'm just trying to think. What was on?
Unknown. I'll share. I said Unknown.
I said Unknown.
Unknown was quite. Oh, did you? Sorry, we didn't hear. Unknown was really big. That's why we watched it.
Yes, yeah, that's the one. I didn't. Yeah, so I didn't watch it. There was also there was one that came out of the PRC late last year that was actually kind of cute. I didn't watch it all, and then it ended sadly because China.
Oh my god, that was together. What's the brothers that we watched?
Stay with me.
Stay with me.
Yeah. I thought that was okay, but like I will admit, like I haven't really engaged with what we call the Sinophone BL space in a long time. So it's the one area that I can't really talk about. Just because, and it's not because like I have any like value judgments around it. It's indeed back in the day when I had time to watch everything, like some of the BL out of Taiwan were some of my favorite. Like I still love Trapped, for instance. But I just haven't watched. Maybe I should go and watch the Taiwanese BL series after we finish chatting. Why not? Because there's a new one. There's a new one from Gaga Lala.
There's a new one, First Note of Love, and then they're coming out with another one soon, which I think it's called the only one, but it might have the director of your name engraved herein, is what I read.
Yes, yeah, that one. I think you're right. And there's another one that involves robots.
No, I no, no.
Yeah.
There is, but no, in the end.
I won't be watching that one because it stars someone incredibly problematic.
Really? I watched that Anti-Reset.
No, Anti-Reset. There's a new one.
Oh.
Yeah.
I just want to get I know you have to go, but I just wanted to double back to the streaming question, because I also noticed that WeTV is doing Monster Next Door, and I'm watching Monster Next Door, but it's available on WeTV, but also over in Gaga Ulala. And it seems that streaming services are like, especially over on IQOY, they've been covering a lot of GMMTV stuff. And so and then some stuff that gets over here and then goes to another streaming service and then goes to another streaming service. So it's not just like, even though WeTV is producing Monster Next Door, and they are showing it, this also over on Gaga Ulala, which, I mean, I have access to WeTV and Gaga Ulala. What do you think about that?
I mean, it's been fairly normal for series to be available across different streaming platforms, much to my annoyance, because that meant that I had to kind of sign up to quite a few of them. And even to this day I still do. What was interesting, of course, that back in the day sometimes that was tied to where you get the uncut versus where you don't get the uncut, whereas that seems to be shifting. I think that it speaks to rights and the complication of how complicated rights can be to manage and negotiate. But beyond that, I don't really have any strong kind of reflections or thoughts, I'm afraid. It annoys me that, for instance, so I would love to be able to watch 4 Minute, right? Legally, so I can support it properly. I mean, if I really wanted to, I would pirate it, but I think that we should be beyond that. But the thing is that there's an exclusive rights deal that VU have negotiated, right? But at the same time, that another VU original that I spammed watch recently because I love the couple, The Rebound, was able to be, there was broad distribution because the contract wasn't so restrictive. So I think that some of this does behoove companies to think carefully about the contracts they're signing and to think carefully about broader access. But the thing is that even to this day, I can tell you now, the companies are interested in global media, like globalization, but some of them, are less interested in that than others, right? And some companies are really quite focused on only particular markets, like China, for instance, and so that's all they really care about, and that's very limiting from the perspective of what can and can not happen. I don't know what led BOC to sign a document that limited their streaming rights from the rest of the world, though I would flag that they didn't do something as stupid as GMMTV did with Cherry Magic. So,
yes.
And I can tell you now, GMMTV learned a harsh and important lesson with the ways in which they dealt with that, and they're never going to make that mistake again. I can promise you now. So I don't think we need to worry about that happening again, because GMMTV rely on, from them, it's not viewership, it's social media. That's how they judge the success of their series. And that is what they are focused on. And when fans of Tainu, we put in the extra mile to trend, even though we couldn't watch. But I don't think every fandom is as crazy as Polka, so that's not going to be able to be a viable kind of business model anymore. So I think that rights sharing is always complicated, and we've now reached a point in the normalization of this market where it's actually understandable why companies wouldn't necessarily be making things freely available anymore. Like, look at the K-drama industry. None of that's free, right? So it's normal. What I think needs to happen, I really think that they need to be working more with Netflix towards global distribution, to be quite honest. And I think that will come. Like, it's just a matter of time.
And Netflix takes over.
Well, there's this. So this is the thing. Like, and I can tell you from talking to industry insiders is that some of the reasons why they like the streaming services that they're currently working with is that they have more autonomy. So Netflix absolutely limits autonomy, and that's one of the issues that they have, and that's a legitimate issue. It's like to give a parallel example from some of my other research, a lot of international fans get grumpy that Japanese acts don't make their lists, like their music, available on Spotify globally and only within Japan. And the reason that they do that is because of the fact that the Japanese companies are quite rightly not happy with the terms that Spotify demands in terms of profit sharing. So they're not going to work with that company until they can ensure that they get the proper rights arrangements. And that's the same things are happening in Thailand. But the thing about the Thai media companies is that they are relatively new to thinking about their products in terms of globality, and it's easier for them right now conceptually to think in terms of region, like East and Southeast Asia in particular. I think one of the most interesting instances was when I was at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and meeting with members of government and members of organizations, like a production organization. And they were trying to I bet you would never know where Thai BL is popular now. And I just listed all the countries. And like, how did you know that? I'm like, because
researcher.
Yes, I know about India. Yes, I know about the Brazilian market. Like, you're the ones who aren't engaged. Like, you're the ones who aren't engaging with them properly. Like, so it's I said to them, it's all well and good for you to be able to talk about them, but how do you engage them? You don't. Like, you know that they're there and you're not doing anything with them. That's not that's like, you're too reliant on China. You're too reliant on Japan. Like, you need to diversify.
Didn't they do some sort of BL big thing that GMMTV was left out? What was that? There was like a big...
No, GMMTV wasn't left out. This is the organization. The organization you're talking to. GMMTV chose not to participate.
What was that? Because it was...
I can't... Like, this is some of the stuff I told you before we went live that I can't really talk about.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. But there's a thing happening in general.
Yeah, there's some stuff happening. And the Thai government has just set up the Thai content, culture and content creative agency called Taka. So they're also, the government is interested in building capacity in creative content industries, but they are not addressing the big serious issue, the elephant in the room, which is poor quality labor standards and exploitation. And as long as they're not doing that, as well as addressing the fact that a country cannot have soft power if that country is authoritarian or anti-democratic. And that's like the big message that I kept on pushing home. No comment.
So you met with the tourism representative, and then I saw photos
of Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Oh, okay. And then Bin Freki and the BOC guys met with the Prime Minister, was it? Or
yeah, as well as other people. Yeah.
And that's the whole thing.
Because Beyond Cloud and Idol Factory have signed memorandums of understanding with the Ministry of Culture. Different agency.
Fascinating.
Bureaucracy. Like, there's all sorts of stuff that I can't fully talk about, but yeah. No, it's developing, and like, so this is my next, like, I'll be in Thailand next year for at least 2 to 3 months, as a visiting fellow at a local university, and we are all working towards this issue, like advising industry and government, and we're going to have a big symposium.
Yay!
Yeah. So.
Oh wow.
Yes. Yeah. So that'll be the next step.
I have no idea what any of that means, but it sounds like something.
A big meeting where we talk about things.
To be bigger. Is the meeting to talk about how to be bigger and more successful?
Developing a soft power strategy.
Okay. Wonderful.
DC is just dying in the corner. Yes.
Some of these things need to be explained to the general populace.
To you.
Yes.
Yeah.
That sounds great. Okay, let's wrap up with is there anything you are looking forward to in the near future, or things that you hear are coming up that you're excited about?
I am looking forward to Tame Po and Pluto, the series from GMMTV, as well as the new Chris Singtor series, The X Morning. Yes, just because I'm Piraya and I've waited a long time to see those boys kissing each other again. That's probably it for now. Like, as I said, like I'm just so busy with things. Like I'm doing a lot more work on my K-pop, J-pop fandom project. So like at the moment, my eye is a little bit turned away from BL in some regards. So yeah, the series from GMMTV that I'm looking forward to. And there's going to be a series from Dumundi. I'm looking forward to the new Zinunu series, the first Prince.
Oh, the Prince? Yes.
Yeah. Just because I think that'll be fun. And also the two other Dumundi series that they've announced, Kimjira and the one with Kong and Thomas. I can't remember what it's called. Owl, like that will be my like token campus crush story, I think. And
what happened to
Boon Prem series, because like I love Boon Prem.
Yeah,
their vampire series, but I think that's only going to come out next year.
Did anything happen with Bump Up Business, like a whole K-pop band?
Did you that K drama Bump Up Business?
What about Bump Up Business?
Oh, it was just I wasn't sure.
It wasn't particularly successful. It was okay.
Okay. It just wasn't. It wasn't my series. It wasn't.
No, I'm the same. Like I would also put it to you that like only one off the group that starred in it. Like they do so much more interesting stuff in their idol work than that particular series. I think Tame Po will be the interesting one for me.
It's kind of
Yeah, because that's looking at idol, because like there's a new idol industry in Thailand that's very interesting. The rise of T-pop, BL actors are now finally, like GMMTV calls them in Thai idols, so they're considered to be all-rounders now. They're not just actors anymore.
How many more guitar playing must we endure? Is that something that you will look into? Or
I'm interested in the rise of idols, and the thing is that one needs to remember that the point of idols isn't that they're necessarily good at everything that they do, but they do everything, and that's kind of fun. That's the point of idols, right? Except if you think in terms of K-pop. K-pop idols are supposed to be perfect at everything they do, but that's because they're trained rigorously, whereas the Thai idols, Japanese idols, do not have that rigorous training at all. And that's okay, because that's the point. You're supposed to support them as they try their best. And I'll say this, as someone who goes to lots of live shows for Thai idols, like as I said, I was at this one, like they're fun, they're great, they're enjoyable. And yeah, maybe they're not the greatest singers and dancers in the world, but they give their best, and that's enjoyable.
They are the ray gun.
I'm just going to put it out there. She is a dear friend of mine, so be very careful what you say next.
She is a Macquarie Uni professor. That's right.
She's in my department, and she's a colleague a friend, not just a colleague. So be careful with what you say.
Okay.
I'm very anti-hate, so I'm all for.
They try their best, and that's the point. Though I will say this, like the concert, the bouncy Boon concert that I went to, it was actually really good. Especially when they started like simulating sex on stage. I'm joking. Like the concerts are getting spicier, and I am all for that personally.
Why was there a controversy with Jimmy C kissing?
Because people are stupid. That's why. Sorry, I've lost my filter. They're dumb. Like because they're stupid. Like they were reenacting a scene from their show. People are dumb because there's an anti-sex culture that exists amongst Gen Z and younger because they're children and they're afraid of adult life. It's my response to that, which we can talk about another time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Thomas, for coming to this live and giving us such a wonderful insight and overview about the many forces at play that influence the production of BLs that we all consume in our homes. It's so fascinating to see the different economic influences as well as the social influences at play. Where can we find out more about your insights and etc.?
I see that you've prepared something to wrap us up.
No, that came naturally. Sometimes I'm just good at that.
So you can follow my social media at Baudinette on Twitter /X, whatever you want to call it. You should call it Twitter. And of course, you can read my scholarship. My most recent book, Boys Love Media in Thailand, is available from all online bookstores. I apologize in advance for the price. And I do make as many of my talks and my scholarship as freely available as I possibly can through various different online repositories. Just follow my social media or Google my name and you'll find everything that you need to find for my stuff, including a home page that I haven't updated recently because I've just been too busy.
Well, I'm so glad that you found some time to join us. I wish we could all be as productive and busy as you.
I wish that I wasn't as busy, quite frankly.
Okay. What's next for you? Just another country? UK. You said the UK.
Yes, I'm heading to the UK at the end of the month. Yes,
no relation to Heartstopper or anything?
No, I'm going to a conference at Oxford.
Talking
about K-pop.
Okay, well, that's it. Thanks, everyone, for watching this live with us. I don't know how to wrap it up.
Okay. Ciao.
Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye. Bye.
See you later. Bye.